Hey everybody, it's Rollie, and I want to welcome you back to Chatting with Wisdom. And as you can tell, this is Friday. So on Tuesday, we had last week's Wednesday Chatting with Wisdom, and today we have Wednesday's Chatting with Wisdom. So thank you very much for joining me, everybody. So Chatting with Wisdom is all about being able to have that opportunity to have these conversations that help to empower women. So sometimes it's based on the topic, sometimes it's based on the conversation that is happening. And so this conversation is definitely going to be very interesting, just simply because Sheila and I have had a chance to have a little bit of a chat beforehand. And so it's definitely going to be taking a life of its own. So Sheila Stone decided after 50 to go back to school, earn a BA from UCLA, and an MA from Leeds Beckett in England. She moved to England and started doing stand-up comedy, and she says, yikes. When she returned back to the US and was unable to find a decent job, she started her own travel business at the age of 60. With Women Sharing Cultures, she creates and leads small group tours for women who want to get off the beaten path and meet locals, in addition to seeing sights. Since the pandemic, she's been writing, since travel is not on the cards at the moment. So welcome, Sheila. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. So we have some snow here. Actually, no, the blue skies come back out. But earlier this morning, we had snow. We had tons of rain, lots of flooding that was actually going on. And this morning, we ended up with snow. And now we've got a beautiful clear sky just as we're meeting. So this is perfect.
Great. We had rain and hail a couple of days ago, which is highly unusual. I'm in Los Angeles. And we're supposed to get a little bit of rain today, which we desperately need because this is the rainy season. And we all turn into crispy critters by the end of summer if we don't get enough rain, because that's when the entire state can catch on fire. So yes. we want rain.
Definitely. You want to be able to have those roots all nice and moisturized. And so,
yes.
So we're having the absolute opposite than you, because we have like tons of snow that has melted very quickly. So basements are not very happy right now, and roads are not very happy right now. But I'm very happy because that means spring is here. I am not a winter person. I definitely live in the wrong part of the world.
As do I, because I like winter better than summer.
Do you want to swap places?
Maybe we need to think about that.
So one of the things that we're going to be talking about is redefining ourselves after 50. And I was telling Sheila before we went on that in the next couple of weeks, I turn 51. So which means that this is definitely a perfect topic for me, but it's also a perfect conversation for many of my friends. And for those of you who are younger, maybe you guys might get some tips for when you actually get there. So just keep that in mind, because it's not that far off, is it, Sheila?
No, you'll be surprised. I'm pushing 70 now, and I'm going, what happened? How did this?
You seriously do not look a day over 50. So congratulations.
I feel it, believe me. There are days when your body goes, no, sweetheart, no.
You're not 25 anymore.
No.
We had a conversation earlier this week with a friend of mine who is 71 this year. She's going to be 72 in April. And one of the things that we were talking about was energy, and how teenage energy is so much different than our energy. And then because we're in our 50 bracket, she's in the 70s bracket, and we're like, and what about you? And she's like that go-getter. She doesn't stop. She keeps going. She probably has more energy than all of our group put together. And she's like, yeah, she said the exact same thing as you. Some days my body says, nah, that's just not happening.
No, and weird stuff happens that you just never expect. I helped my son move, and I pinched a nerve, and I was laid up for 3 months. What?
Wow.
What? How can this be? I wasn't doing anything really major, but I twisted funny, and so staying in shape, I guess, is really important, kids.
It definitely is, and being able to build up those muscles. And so I was talking with you beforehand about the women's conference, and that's one of the things that one of our speakers had shared as well, is that she was talking about being able to like get your body back into the strength in order to be able to move forward, and so that she can actually maintain that strength. And so she's actually 61, and she is a cold water swimmer and I can't remember what age that she started.
Whoa.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not me. I'm definitely not going in the water to do cold water swimming. But I know that it is therapeutically, I know that it's amazing. And so it is definitely something for people to be able to check out, but also being able to, like you said, like keeping our bodies in shape is one of the things that is extremely helpful, but also keeping our minds stimulated.
Oh, gosh, yes. Gosh, yes.
Right?
You can be 40 and have the brain of someone who's given up and who just goes, well, not as young as I used to be. Well, none of us are as young as we used to be. And that's really great because that means we're still here.
Yep. Absolutely.
The alternative to getting older is death. So, embrace that getting older. It beats the alternative by a long shot.
Well, and I often have people say, well, would you like to go back to when you were 15 or wherever? Like they always go back into a younger age. And I'm like, no, I don't. Because then I have to start all over again. I've already gone through all those things. I don't want to go through it again. I want to be able to have fun in the things that we're doing now. So like, that's my thing. So tell me a little bit more about your program. So obviously there's no traveling going on, but
no, not right now. But I am writing because that's something I can do from my bedroom. So I'm writing some guidebooks on London. The kind of guidebooks I wish I had the first time I went, because I was 50 before I went overseas. And it's not that there isn't any information out there, it's that there's too much information out there. And so these are tiny books. The first one is getting ready to be published, hopefully by the end of the month. And, then there'll be 3 of them together. So that's what I've been doing. And then I have another book that I'm reworking, and I plan to release it also as tiny books. And that book is called Late Bloomer, a guide for women still on the wrong side of the glass ceiling.
Nice. Can you are you able to share a little bit more about that one? That was intriguing.
Happy to. I wrote the book actually at a very, very rough time of my life. A lot of times we don't get to where we think we're going to go. Like this was after I'd earned my master's degree, I came back to the U.S. This was right after the economic downturn, and I could not get arrested. I swear, I would send out nobody wanted to talk to you. You couldn't call anybody to follow up on, like, if you sent them a resume. I sent out resumes with my master's degree. I sent them out without my master's degree. I was staying with an acquaintance whose house was being foreclosed on. So she had put all of her furniture away, and it just had 2 beds. And she worked nights, so I never saw her. And during the day, I'd go to Starbucks, buy my $2, cup of coffee, and get on my computer and, send out resumes. And I went like that for 9 months.
Oh, wow.
In the evenings, I would read library books because there was no television. I was living in an area where I didn't know anyone. It was grim. It was grim. And part of the thing I did to keep myself sane was write. And I had already been through bad times and come out of them. And I had no doubt but that would happen. And it did. But that doesn't make it any more fun.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And when we're in those grim periods, it is so difficult for us to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. And like you said, you've been through so many things in the past, and you know that you can overcome it. So like mentally, you know that, emotionally, and that's just,
it becomes a slog. You're just kind of going
one foot front of the other, right?
One foot in front of the other. And, that's part of life. It, but, I did come out of it. And starting my business, I wouldn't have started the business if I hadn't gone through that. My son said, well, Mom, start your own business. And it's been harder than I thought it would be, but it's also been more magnificent and wonderful and exciting. And I just get excited thinking about, we had a trip last year. I took a group of 6 women because my tours are very small. I don't want to be responsible for 40 people. Hello. So I took 6 women and we went to Japan. And I'd been to Japan. My sons went on exchange there. I had hosted, when my kids were teenagers, we hosted exchange students from Japan. So we have a lot of connections there. And I really wanted my women to meet these amazing, wonderful Japanese women. And when things like that happen, it's fantastic because literally, as the facilitator, I just step back. Because women will just take the ball and run with it. They wanted to get to know each other. They wanted to know about each other's lives. And, it was just, I remember afterwards I was trying to tell somebody about it and I burst into tears.
It really is incredible to be able to have those experiences, right? And so one of the things that I struggle with often is when I'm taking people on, I'm not taking them on physical journeys, but I'm taking them on emotional or spiritual journeys. And so when we're doing that, it's really hard to describe. Like we can say, okay, we're going to do A, B, C, and D, but that's not the experience. Like that is not what it is, right? You can say we're going to go to Japan and we're going to do A, B, C, and D, but it's those connections. And it's the connections even with the first 6 women.
Right.
And so connections with the first 6 women and then meeting.
Absolutely. One of the women was she was lovely, great big Samoan woman. And one of the other women was in her 70s and she had some bad knees. And suddenly the Samoan woman, when we'd go downstairs, she would offer her arm and make sure that the other woman could make it down the stairs without any trouble. She never made a big deal about it. It was just what she did.
Yeah.
And I love that. Women are amazing. This is the kind of stuff we do.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. And when we take that time out for ourselves, and that's one of the things that because as women, we are often, I can't really afford that. But yet, if somebody else in the family needed something, it would be no hesitation. They're going to find the money to be able to do that. But we struggle as women to be able to put that need first of
True.
And that experience, right? So this is something that, so like you said, you had these women that come together but they were able to put their needs first. And some of them may or may not have been able to afford it as easily as others. Right. So, but being able to have that experience is something that you actually get to take back and have for a lifetime in terms of memories and experiences and friendships.
That's right. And I just, because we're all on Facebook, and to see them commenting on each other's stuff just makes me so happy. I did another tour to the Bayou country of Louisiana. I've done a couple of those. And we had a potluck with local women. So there was a woman who was Native American, and there was someone who, there were a couple of women who were African American and women who were Cajun. And we all sat down, and literally within 10 minutes of starting our food, one of the women was telling us about her first experience of racism. It was heavy, but it was magnificent, and it was wonderful. And we crave those connections as women. We want to meet women and go deeper than just, hello, how are you? That kind of thing. And that's part of the reason why someone said, well, why don't you include men in your tours? And I went, do you really think men are going to want to sit around and discuss their feelings? Spend an evening doing that?
Some do. Not all.
Some do. But I would say across the board, a lot of them would be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like, but then there's also the vulnerability is that women are not necessarily going to show their same vulnerability that they would. So the woman who shared about her first experience with racism, right? So, and that's something that we don't hear very much, right? So, like, yes, we hear some things in the news and we see articles from here and there, and so unless it's directly impacting us, then we don't actually see that. And so, one of the things that I'm fortunate is that I've got white privilege, so I am Métis, which means that but I am more fair-skinned, and so I can fit into society as being somebody who is completely white, and so I don't have that same experience as my one cousin who has all the Aboriginal physical traits. When they see her, they actually refer to her as Native, right? So, and it's like all these different things, and so I'm fortunate in that sense. And so, but because I've worked in the mental health field and addiction field for so many years, I've seen how that racism works firsthand, and I'm a strong advocate against it. And because I've been able to have those experiences and have been able to hear people's stories, like you said, with that one woman, right? So, and it really does make a difference when they can actually feel safe enough. And that's one of the things. So that's kudos to you of them being able to feel safe enough in the environment that you set out for them, that she was able to come forward and share that experience.
It's, because obviously I'm white. I call myself generic white. I mean, for someone white, first off, my degrees are in anthropology. Race is a cultural construct. It doesn't have anything to do with, there may be physical things about it, like the color of the skin or the shape of the eyes or something. But really, race is cultural. It's not physical. And I was going somewhere with that. That is one of the downsides of getting older. My train of thought just derailed. So
I'm right on track then.
I know. But the thing is, we reading about something that happened to someone, reading it on the news or hearing it on the news, that could be impactful, but it's not as impactful as sitting there and listening to someone that you're eating with say, the first time I experienced racism, I was in a church and I sat down with my children and these two white ladies got up and moved. That really impacts you. That really brings it home that my life experience is not the same as everybody's.
Yep. It definitely is. And last year I was in a group where somebody happened to have said something and it was apparently a racial slur, and I would have never known it to be a racial slur because it's something that we would say on a regular basis. And so when and then somebody, and I definitely honor the person who actually came forward and said, that's a racial slur. And but it's just an expression that we've used from the time that I know that I've used it when I was little, and that we've used it as adults, and we've used it with our own children and that kind of thing. But it was making reference to Black people and how they were, it was in reference to them being animals. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not cool. Like, that's not good. But we wouldn't know that if we weren't educated on it.
That's right. And so right now, my country is being, there's a lot of controversy about Confederate statues being pulled down and Confederate flags not being, a thing. And a lot of people, it's those liberals and they're really, they're just so thin-skinned and everything. But, the people who say that are white.
Yeah.
I feel like if it doesn't cost anything to be kind.
No.
Even if I go, well, I never really thought that, about Aunt Jemima or whatever. if that bothers someone, then being kind is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not my place to say, oh, that's not offensive.
It may be to someone else. And that's one of the things. So you guys have, like, that's what it is that's going on in the US. But for us in Canada, this has been an upgoing battle for us for a long time with Aboriginals. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when all these things were happening in the US, I know that a lot of Canadian friends are like, oh, this is just so stupid. And like, why is this all over the news? And this should just be like Canada with no racism. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you checked in your backyard? Because I'm pretty sure there's something going on back there. And it's sometimes hard for people to be able to have those conversations, but being able to have those opportunities where we can actually connect and learn with each other so that we can educate, right? Mm-hmm. So the women that were in that circle now get to be able to educate their children, and they get to educate their grandchildren and nieces and nephews and their brothers and sisters. And so it actually helps to so it builds out that ripple. Right. While having a strong connection with one particular person.
That's what it's all about, is connections. Because if we're connected to someone, we won't want to be unkind. We won't want to do anything that would make them feel uncomfortable. But it's if all of your friends look like you, mm-hmm. then you don't have those experiences. No. And it may not be your fault. It might be where you live. If I grew up in a town that was all white, it was, I didn't know it. I mean, I was a little kid, but they didn't allow people of color to move in.
Yeah.
Back then. So, all my friends were white. That's kind of what the options were.
And that was the norm, right? So
that was the norm. But that doesn't give me a pass. Of course, I moved to Los Angeles, one of the most diverse cities on earth, and went, whoa, this is amazing. I'm going to have bagels. I'm going to have egg rolls. I'm going to have, I'm going to eat all this wonderful food and make all these wonderful friends. But if I hadn't, that still wouldn't give me a pass.
Yeah. And I like the way that you say that, right? It doesn't give me a pass. And so we've kind of gone off, and I told you that we would actually end up having these very interesting conversations. And we can probably talk all day, but kind of bringing back to redefining ourselves after 50. So can you tell me a little bit more about that specifically? So you've shared about the trips themselves, but why are you making reference to redefining ourselves?
Okay. When I was a single parent, and then I had an arrangement with my ex-husband that the children and I could stay in the house until the youngest graduated from high school. At that point, I knew we were going to have to move. The oldest went off to university. The youngest graduated from high school. I prepared to move. And it was a really traumatic thing. We'd lived there 13 years. And my ex-husband had just met the love of his life, which wasn't me. I mean, it was after we were divorced, but it still wasn't an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
So I had the company I'd worked for. I'd been a writer, and it was a .com. This is in 2001 when all the .coms were falling. So I lost my job. It was one of those years of hell. So I finally, we got moved. We're in the new place, feeling better. And I was like, okay, now what am I going to do now? I had a job. I was working back at Caltech, California Institute of Technology. I was an admin, nothing impressive. And
actually, they do the most work. I'm sorry.
Well, they do the most work. But when I tell people I worked in the math department at Caltech, they go, wow. It's like, no, I wasn't a mathematician. I was the person who put together the tests. And I loved it. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was thinking, okay, so okay, I'm out of crisis mode. Now what? And my youngest son was starting the community college, and I thought, well, I'll take a class. First class I took was anthropology, and I sat there going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so I threw myself into getting a degree. And I worked and went to school full time for 2 years. That was crazy. And then I transferred to UCLA. For 1 year, both my sons and I were all at UCLA. It's a big campus, and we didn't live together. And it was wonderful. And it was. We had 3 UCLA graduations in 3 years. Nice. I was the one in the middle.
Beautiful.
And that kind of expanded my worldview to where when I was a junior, I went to Japan for 6 weeks. I was able to do research for an honors thesis. So I went to Japan for 6 weeks and interviewed midlife women. And then after I graduated, that was when I started doing stand-up, and I moved to Europe for a year. Because at that point I had no, it was like, well, I didn't want to be a burden on my kids. Not financially, but just, oh, when are you going to come and spend time with me? Oh, I wanted them to be with me because they wanted to be with me, not because I had guilted them into it. And because of this, we are able to, when we get together, we have a lot of things we can talk about. And that was amazing. And I found that I was able to do far more than I had ever thought I could do. And one of the best things about getting the degree, and just a moment, I will say, I did graduate magna cum laude.
What does that mean?
That means I had a high GPA.
Okay, beautiful.
So I had
all with honors in, so it's probably the same thing. So
right. Okay, so yours is like in England, because that's what they have is honors and distinction. Merit. Okay. Sorry, not honors, merit and distinction.
Okay.
But anyway, the thing that did it was it changed the way I looked at myself. It changed the way other people looked at me, but it also changed the way I viewed myself. And I think that was the most powerful, because it was like, oh, I can do this. I'm capable. And it was just a really good thing. Now, of course, that was followed by another downturn. But like I said, that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. And that gives you, going through things, opening yourself up to things, that gives you options too, because you're able to see more options.
Yeah. And I love the way that you said that, right? So it led me into another down, but all of these downs lead us into different experiences that we would never have had if we stay in that safe lane. Right? So life can be super easy if we just stay in that safe lane and never, ever look over to see what's going on over the other side. Just keep right on going, and it's safe. And you can probably get some satisfaction out of that. But when you have those up and downs, and not that I want the downs,
no.
I'm not promoting for any of the downs, but they are part of those learning experiences. And so one of the things that I often tell people when they are struggling with oh my God, I'm just bombarded with all these things that are happening in my life. And it's but those things allow you to be able to be stronger. Those things allow you to be able to have that ability. And those things allow you to be able to build up that resistance. And so that allows you to be able to, when the cookie's crumbling, it allows you to be able to put the pieces back together again. Right? So
and
you
it
get
also,
to put all this together.
And another thing I think is important too, is it also gives us empathy, that in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise. If everything had always gone along well for us and someone else is really, really struggling, it's easier to feel empathy when you go, yeah, I feel your pain. I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
Or at least, because you don't always know what they're going through, but at least you can say, look, I've been through bad times too, and this too shall pass.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think empathy is one of the real important byproducts of going through bad times, because otherwise it's just like, well, I don't understand. Everything's good here.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I know my husband gets annoyed with me, but like even something as simple as driving, and the driver's doing something kind of weird, and it's like, but you don't know what's going on in that other car.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what it is that's happening. Are they fighting with a 2-year-old in the back seat? Are they like, what is it that's going on? Are they somebody who is nervous because it's their first time driving on their own? Are they like, is this their first time? Like, do the wheels feel a little bit like, is something going on with the car? Like, who knows, right? So we don't know
Right.
what is going on with that other person. So being annoyed because they're going a little bit faster, and if they're going into the other lane, that's an entirely different story. But sometimes they're kind of like swerving a little bit, and it's like, what's going on? Like, maybe it's something as simple as they're trying to give the soother to the baby in the back seat, which is still not safe, but that could be something as simple as that, right?
Right.
So,
right.
And so we don't know what's going on in that other driver's seat. And that's one of the things that we need to sometimes remember, is to be able to, as much as it's great for us to be able to have those, like, which way are we going to turn? But it's still important for us to be able to stay in our own driver's seat, because we have no control over anyone else's.
Right. You're the only person you have control over. Yeah. And if you really put your head down, I think you'd be surprised at how much you can do. When I went back to school, starting as a freshman at my age, it was a little bit almost embarrassing. Here I am in class surrounded by all these kids, and I struggled with math. Oh my gosh. It was pathetic. I mean, you had to take these tests, tests to see how good you are and what class you needed to go into. And you had to take them for math and for English. Now, for English, I aced it. I got 100%. For math, after about the first 3 questions, I'm just hitting, it was multiple choice, and I'm just hitting anything going, just let me out. I know I need to take the lowest class. Just. And my son said, well, Mom, how come you're taking introduction to introduction to algebra or whatever? Why are you taking that class? And I said, because they don't offer anything lower.
But I need a math class.
Yeah, I mean, and here I'd worked at in the math department at Caltech. Didn't make any difference. You don't learn it by osmosis.
And yeah, so we all have our brilliance in different places. And so that is sometimes like the testing is sometimes that's one of the things that's challenging, because that's not one, like, that doesn't really define our true self of who it is that we
absolutely.
are. Right? So, but it is.
What I said to myself when I started working in the math department was, we're all stupid, just on different subjects. And that helped me deal with these extremely brilliant men, and they were all men at that point, who were, they could do things that I couldn't even get my brain around, but then I could do things they couldn't get their brains around.
Yeah.
Theirs was more technical and more valued. If you looked at our paychecks, you would know that. But the bottom line is, it gives you that confidence. Knowing that, it gives you the confidence, and it gives you the feeling, the knowledge that what you have and what you do is still valuable. That, just because you don't know A doesn't mean that you're stupid on everything.
Yeah. And
stupid might not be the right word to use.
But I think that people get the
point. Gets the point across.
Yeah. So like, it's not to devalue anyone, but it really is like something that I'm really good at isn't necessarily something that I'm not going to be good at. So I have 3 sisters, and the 4 of us all have like different unique skills of things that we're able to do that look so different from each other. And so, so one of the things for a long time, I would say, yeah, I'm not very creative. And people are like, have you seen the programs that you whip out? That's pretty creative. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the same. You're helping people and you come up with like really creative ways to be able to help them. And I'm like, okay, so I guess maybe I am creative, right? But it's not the same kind of creativity. I have a sister who, she asked me, oh, do you want to come driftwood shopping with me? So we were going down the beach area looking for driftwood, and I see sticks. I see sticks. And she's like, oh, look at this moose head. And until she points out that she sees a moose head in there, I see a stick, right? And then when she creates it and transforms it into whatever, what she had seen in her head is something, but that's not where my creativity lies. But it doesn't mean that I'm any less creative. And so
absolutely.
And it's just really important for us to do that, to remember that.
I have two sons, and the oldest is a physicist, and he works at Jet Propulsion Lab. He worked on one of the things that went up on the last Mars rover.
Okay.
The youngest is a creative director at a medical tech company. Now, so you've got art and you've got science, and they did not get either of those predilections from their mother.
But it really is interesting. So one of the things that I have added is your website. And so anybody that wants to be able to go and check out Sheila's website, and I know that when traveling is allowed, it's definitely something that I'm going to be definitely looking into. I struggle with travel simply because I'm a very picky eater. So trying to go somewhere else to eat is a little bit challenging for me and a little bit anxiety provoking for me. But I love the idea of what it is that you're putting together in terms of that travel. But I really love the idea of being able to redefine ourselves, right? We do not have to be defined by who we were said that we were going to be when we were 10, right?
Yes.
Or in a new relation, like into our first married relationship, or into becoming a mom. Like there are so many more things that we are so much more of. And I thank you for sharing that with women, because it is so important for us to be able to understand that we can be, like, I thought that it was bad when I went back to school when I was 25 with 2 kids. Actually, no, I was 28 with 2 kids. And it was like, okay, what kind of craziness am I doing right now? But it was just something that I needed to do, right? And so I thought I thought that was challenging then, but I think,
and it was.
Yeah.
Because your children were small. Mine, at least, were grown. So don't disparage what you went through. That is an incredible accomplishment.
And I graduated with honors in 2 programs. Right? So like those are the things that we actually get to be able to say yes. So my first year I had the 4.0, and then I don't know how your skating, that's our highest, is 4.0.
Ours is 4.0 as well.
And then so my first year was like, that's what I had. My second year was like, oh, I don't think I can keep up this pace. So it was still over the 3.5, which still allowed me to be able to, actually 3.8, I think, is what allows it to still be with honors. But so I was still able to do that, but it wasn't 4. And it was like, and that's okay. But it took me a long time of self-discovery during that first year to be able to it's okay that it's not 4. And so,
right, we don't have to be. That's another thing that's wonderful about getting older. We realize we don't have to be perfect. What a concept.
Well, I have truly enjoyed this conversation. And Francine, you're not on the replay again. So my friend Francine joined us earlier, and she had said that she was on the replay, but we were still live. But we are coming to the end, Francine, so you are going to have to go back and watch again. And you'll really love this conversation, Francine. So you definitely want to you definitely want to catch the replay. So I want to thank you again, Sheila, for first of all, for shifting days and time for us. And it's 7 a.m. or it was 7 a.m. when we started this call. for you. And so thank you so much for being here so early in the morning. And as I start my first weekend off since the beginning of, since December, the conference has taken a lot out of me. And so this is my first weekend off, and we're going to go clean out my mother-in-law's house. So like, that's even more fun.
You really know how to party.
I know. So that is what I'm going to do, spending the weekend with her, is getting some things cleaned up and sold off for her. And so that's my plan for this weekend. But thank you so much for joining me. And I'm definitely looking forward to connecting with you further. And
Yes.
Thanks everyone for watching. And if you guys have any feedback or any other questions, please definitely don't hesitate to share them. And Sheila will definitely be happy to share more about her journey.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Rollie. And thank you for letting me drink my coffee.
And when your books come out, please let me know.
I will definitely do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.